Alright, so we do time for the vector component form and magnitude paper solutions. And so on each of these, remember that a vector has both direction and magnitude. Magnitude being like how long it is, and direction, so well, the direction it's going. And if you want to get that, you need to get the change in x and the change in y for all of your vectors. Change in x is simply x2 minus x1, and the change in y is simply y2 minus y1. And in this case, y2 and x2, that's the terminal point, the terminal side where the arrow is, and then x1 and y1's the initial side. And so on a bunch of these, the left one can be the terminal side, the right one can be the initial side. It just depends on where the arrow is. So on this first one, our delta x, the change in x, well, right here your x is 0 and the y is 0. Over here you have the coordinates of 9, 4. Well, if you go from 0 to 9, that's an increase of 9. If you go from 0 to 4, your change in y is 4. And so your vector here is at 9, 4. And that's the whole thing. Moving on to 2. We're starting out here at 0, 0 and ending at 1, 2, 3, 6, negative 6, and then 1, that's 9 up, so 9 up. And so your change in x, since you go from 0 to negative 6, that's a change of negative 6. And the change in the y is 9, because you go from 0 up to 9. And so our vector is negative 6, 9. On 3, you start out 0, 0. And at negative 2, negative 4. And you notice if you're starting out 0, 0, and whatever you end at, that is your vector. So you're looking at negative 2, negative 4. Oh, not parenthesis. Vector. On 4, we don't start at 0, 0, so be very careful on this one. You start at 2, 2. And then you end at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At 6, 9. So if you're going from 2 to 6, that is a change in the x of 4. The change in y, going from 2 to 9, is a change of 7. And so our vector is 4, 7. Moving on to 5, we start out here, which is at 1, 2, 3, 4. So that points at 4, 0. That's a 0. And we end at 1, 2, 3, 4. At 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 8, negative 6. So if we start out at 4 and we go to 8, that's a change in x and 4. If we start at 0 and go to negative 6, that's a change of negative 6. And so our vector is 4, negative 6. On 6, you start out at 0, negative 3. And then you end with a y value of 2 and an x value of negative 8. If you go from 0 to negative 8, that's a change in x being negative 8. And the change in y, going from negative 3 up to 2, is an increase of 5. And so our vector is negative 8, 5. On these ones, once again, you can do your y2 minus y1 stuff here. If you start at 0, 0, whatever your terminal point is, that is your vector coordinates, your components for your vector. Because if you do 0 minus 5, well, that's just 5, and 4 minus 0 is just 4, and so we got 5, 0. This one, if you're going from negative 10, from negative 4 to negative 10, negative 10 minus negative 4 is going to be negative 6, so there's your change in x. The change in y is going from 3, from 1 to 3, so you do 3 minus 1, that's a change in 2. And so your vector is negative 6, 2. if we want to get our change in x for 9, you have to do 5 minus 1, which is 4. And the change in y is negative 4 minus 3, which is a change of negative 7. So our vector is for negative 7. And moving on to 10, our change in x is negative 2 minus 0, which is just negative 2. That change there. The change in the y, 1 minus 7 gives you a change of negative 6. So if you start here and here, you had to subtract 2 from the x's, subtract 6 from the y's, and so your vector is negative 2, negative 6. Moving on to 11, the change in x would be 8 minus 2, which is 6, and the change in the y is 9 minus 0, which is 9. And so our vector is 6, 9. And on 12, your change in x comes from the 0 minus negative 6, which is 6. And the change in the y comes from 5 minus negative 1, which is 6. And so this vector is increase x, 6, increase y of 6. And so you had to take both of those and add 6 to them to get your 0, 5 there. Okay, so that's all the components for the vectors. On the back side of your paper, you have to get the magnitude for each of the given ones. To do that, you use this handy formula of x squared plus y squared, and then you square root it. So here, you just take your x coordinate, square it, take your y coordinate, square it, and you're in business here. So I need to do 2 squared, I need to add 6 squared, 2 squared is 4, 6 squared is 36, you're looking at a square root of 40. And it does ask you to simplify, which, depending on who you talk to, can mean all sorts of things. I feel like that is plenty simplified, but if you're really looking to simplify things, if you're wanting like some decimal approximation, I guess you could do that. Square root of 40 is about 6.3. On 4, you're just going to square both of those guys out together. Make sure you're careful with your negatives. If you square a negative, it becomes positive. 3 squared is 9. Negative 2 squared is 4. 9 plus 4 is 13, so square root of 13 is looking like our answer. And if you're looking to approximate that, you're looking at about 3.6. On 15, you need to square both of those guys there. So square your negative 1, square your 7, you'll get 1 plus 49, which is a square root of 50, which is the exact answer. But if you're looking to approximate it, you're looking at 7.1, about 7.1. Just rounding in my first decimal there. On 16, take both those guys, you guys square them up. Negative 3 squared plus negative 4 squared. Negative 3 squared is 9. Negative 4 squared is 16. 9 plus 16 is 25. So the square root of 25 is actually a whole number 5. On 17, you need to square both of your components there. The 5 squared is 25. 7 squared is negative 7 squared is positive 49. 25 plus 49 gives you 74, and so that's your exact answer. That is approximately 8.6. On 18, you just need to square both of those guys. Negative 6 squared, add them together. 8 squared, negative 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64. 36 plus 64 is 100. And the square root of 100 is 10. So that's your final answer there. 19. You just gotta square both of those and add them together. 1 squared is 1, 4 squared is 16, so 1 plus 16 gives you a square root of 17. That's your exact answer, and that is approximately 4.1. And then on 20, you guys square both of those guys together, add them up. Negative 10 squared plus negative 5 squared. Negative 10 squared is 100. Negative 5 squared is 25. 100 plus 25 is 125. And that's your exact answer, which is approximately 11.2. And I gotta circle that one. And that's your whole assignment.